When a former neo-Nazi even admits himself that he cannot continue as a Conservative candidate, why is Kemi Badenoch finding him another job instead?
We're all going to be accused of being racist. Look them in the face and say, so what?
This is Joshua Bonehill-Payne before he was standing to be a Tory councillor in Somerset. He was convicted of racially harassing a Jewish MP. Outcry means he won't now run for election. Instead, he'll become an advisor to the Conservatives.
I looked at this case very carefully. This was a judgment call. And this is someone who has served his sentence. If we're saying, no, 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 you're untouchable, then how can we pretend that we believe in rehabilitation?
Kemi Badenoch argues that everyone deserves a chance to change, and her new advisor has done just that, reforming himself from a neo-Nazi to become an expert on de-radicalisation. But was he ever fit to stand for office? Some wonder why on earth the Conservatives are so keen to cling on to him. Also tonight. Such is the pressure piling on its president that FIFA's now having to deny reports that Gianni Infantino promised Morocco they could host the World Cup final if they backed him. We're with Ukraine until they win, says the new Defence Secretary, as ITV News travels with him to the country, just as Kyiv's hit by a huge attack.
I'm 40 times more likely to get cancer than people that aren't DES exposed.
Sarah's investigation into the harmful effects of the pregnancy drug DES sparks vital new research, and it's not the hum of a bird or a plane. So what is this creature that's swarming our skies this summer?
This is ITV News at 10 with Paul Brand.
Good evening. When the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch threw her weight this morning behind a former neo-Nazi as a candidate for a council seat in Somerset, she said it was a judgment call. The judgment of Jewish groups, and one Labour politician in particular, was very different. A backlash bubbled throughout the day. The politician, Baroness Berger, a victim of Joshua Bonehill-Payne's past anti-Semitism, said he should be excluded from public life. This afternoon, the would-be councillor threw in the towel. He didn't want to be a distraction. But rather than accept his decision as a convenient way out of the controversy, Kemi Badenoch instead appointed him as an advisor to her on de-radicalisation. Baroness Berger said that was as bad as him standing as a councillor. She called his appointment an insult.
In the end, Joshua Bonehill-Payne's neo-Nazi past and his crimes were just too controversial for him to continue as a Conservative candidate. This was Bonehill-Payne addressing a British National Party event in 2014.
We're all going to be accused of being racist. Look them in the face and say, so what? So what?
2 years later, he found himself on trial.
The reason why I am being taken to court is because I'm a nationalist.
In fact, he was convicted of the racially aggravated harassment of Jewish Labour MP Luciana Berger, who said his campaign of hate had a deep impact on her and her family. At the time of his trial, Bonehill-Payne was already serving a prison sentence for stirring up racial hatred, although that didn't stop him performing a Nazi salute in court. In recent years, he has been running a satirical website, has become a campaigner against anti-Semitism, and has regretted his past actions.
On reflection, the way how I behaved in the courtroom was atrocious.
Kemi Badenoch said she personally had approved his selection as a Tory candidate.
I looked at this case very carefully. This was a judgment call. And this is someone who has served his sentence. And what I feel is that if we can't have the people who have previously been radicalised, who understand what went wrong and are part of the fight against anti-Semitism now, if we're saying, no, 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 you're untouchable, then how can we pretend that we believe in rehabilitation?
But then this afternoon, Bonehill-Payne withdrew, writing, "I know that if I stand as a council candidate, other political parties will spend all their time focusing on my past rather than the work I'm doing today, or even fighting anti-Semitism in their own midst." Tonight, the Foreign Secretary welcomed the withdrawal.
He should never have been a candidate. It's absolutely the right thing that his candidacy that he has withdrawn his candidacy. I think the Conservative Party is going to have to answer for why he was a candidate in the first place, and also any future activities he might be undertaking on behalf of the Conservative Party.
And Kemi Badenoch has now offered Bonehill Payne a new role as an advisor on radicalisation.
Obviously, the Conservative Party needs to keep a close eye on this to make sure that that is not used inappropriately. And they own that. It's up to them. But it is clearly a better place than we started the day, where he was going to be a candidate in the upcoming elections.
Tonight, the Labour Party said it beggared belief that Kemi Badenoch had selected Bonehill Payne as a candidate, whilst Reform UK said it beggared belief that she had now made him an advisor.
And Carl is here, as you can see. I mean, Carl, it does seem quite surprising that Kemi Badenoch wants to double down on this tonight, particularly, you know, a councillor. You wouldn't expect necessarily for her to be this involved as Conservative Party leader. What do you think the point is that she's trying to make?
Well, it's hard to fathom, to be perfectly honest with you, because this is the same Kemi Badenoch who said just a few years ago the country needs conviction politicians, not politicians with convictions. So she was clearly alive to the political risks of hiring someone like this, even as a councillor, yet she got personally involved in defending him. And this chap, Joshua Bonehill Payne, even though he may well have been rehabilitated, has a string of serious convictions and a number of jail sentences, including for harassing politicians. So it's hard to see how this was ever going to end well. And speaking of which, one of those politicians, Luciana Berger, has spoken more about this tonight, saying the decision to welcome this individual as an advisor to the Leader of the Opposition is no better than allowing him to stand as a council candidate. It is a privileged and influential national role. As a victim of this man's heinous crimes, this appointment is an insult. And Luciana Berger is not only the victim of this man's crimes, but she is a pretty impressive campaigner and not somebody you really want on the other side. So I don't think that Kemi Badenoch has heard the last of this.
Indeed, Carl. Thank you very much indeed for that. In the absence of any substantial new information from inside FIFA's crisis meeting on the future of its president, Gianni Infantino, the organisation has been forced to deny yet more damaging speculation. The meeting is being held in the Moroccan capital, Rabat. This evening, FIFA branded as false and misleading reports that Mr Infantino had promised Morocco could host the final of the next World Cup in return for the support of its football federation.
The most powerful executives in world football have been called to the Moroccan capital for crisis talks about the future of their leader. Gianni Infantino, who was last seen with royalty in Rabat last week, is under serious pressure to save his presidency. Here, he had to face senior staff who only yesterday criticised his failed plan to sell shares in the World Cup. FIFA's Africa headquarters have only been open since this time last year, a new office fit for the hosts of the next World Cup. At its opening, Infantino said, "It is here we will write the history of football in Africa and the world." So it is also a reminder of his presidential strategy, the global expansion of the game.
I think what is important for me, of course, is
this approach has meant he has international support beyond the traditional football strongholds in Europe. In Lebanon, where Infantino holds citizenship, the FA are still right behind him.
Only European countries, and not even all European countries, want him to leave, just certain ones, and this is nothing new. I doubt UEFA can do it. I don't think they can find someone who can win against Gianni Infantino, because I know how much the other federations believe in his vision.
It's believed Infantino has been calling around for football stars to endorse him. Instead, former high-profile Portuguese player Luis Figo said he should resign and accused him of being deceitful and self-interested. And tonight, FIFA have been forced to formally deny accusations the next World Cup final has already been promised to Morocco over co-hosts Spain and Portugal in return for backing Infantino now. But he'll need all that support and more to survive this and stand any chance of winning another term in the presidential election being held back here in Morocco in March.
Well, Ali is in Rabat this evening. Evening to you, Ali. And in the last few minutes, we have actually heard from FIFA.
Exactly, Paul. In breaking news in the last few minutes, we can tell you that FIFA have given ITV News a briefing directly and really given us a sense of how those emergency talks in Rabat have gone today. They've told us that sources close to Gianni Infantino acknowledge that improvements need to be made at FIFA, but that the president retains considerable support and he's accountable to all 211 member associations. I think we can gain an insight into how those talks went, but also a sense that this is business as usual for the president and perhaps his top aides as well. Alongside this briefing, we can also bring you this photograph, again, from tonight. I think it's a real display of unity and togetherness. It's Gianni Infantino and the Secretary-General Matthias Grafstrom watching the Women's Africa Cup of Nations together. All smiles. Let's not forget the Secretary-General only yesterday sent out an email to FIFA's staff members saying that the last week had been a sad series of events and that individuals come and go. But tonight it seems as though that has changed, and this is a real photo of them together and all smiles. FIFA has told us we can expect a formal communication later this evening, but I think it's fair to say that this is a real indication of the mood in the top of FIFA tonight.
OK, Ali, fascinating to get that insight from inside the room. Thank you very much indeed. On his first visit to Ukraine as Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting heard one heartfelt appeal and made one heartfelt promise of his own. A day after a bloody night of Russian attacks, which we're about to see, President Zelensky said Ukrainians were being killed because they didn't have the Western-supplied interceptors to shoot down Russian missiles. Mr. Streeting told him, "We are with Ukraine until they win."
Another night without sleep in Ukraine. A few watched what appeared to be cluster bomb strike. Many more took shelter from this ferocious Russian assault. Just after midnight, around the capital, firefighters tackled a series of enormous blazes. Ukraine brought down scores of Russian drones, but just one Russian missile killed 8 people at this railway station. Ukraine says lives were lost because they have a severe shortage of US-made interceptors. A bloody backdrop for talks between President Zelensky and Britain's latest defence secretary.
I'm sorry I'm arriving on a day when you've had a difficult night.
Yeah, but really between us, we usually have not simple nights.
For us, air defence is #1, and to strengthen our capabilities, our own capabilities, because we depend on anti-ballistic.
Where Streeting was shown the scars of earlier attacks and promised what help he can.
We've got a huge coalition of support for Ukraine, a wide range of capability across that coalition, and it's my job as the UK Defence Secretary, particularly working closely with Boris Pistorius, the German Defence Minister, through our contact group to mobilise support for Ukraine, and that's what we're doing.
Patriot batteries are a proven defence against ballistic missiles, but America's own stockpiles are stretched by war in the Gulf. Donald Trump offered and then withdrew the chance for Ukraine to build their own.
A little birdie told me this, about the fact that we'll give them the right to make Patriots.
We have not agreed to that. We're talking about it, but it's a hard thing to give away that kind of technology.
And the Ukrainians are working on an anti-ballistic missile, surface-to-air missile that could intercept the ballistic missile warheads as they come in. But clearly that is going to take some time to come to fruition. So the supply of Patriot missiles becomes incredibly important.
Russia says it targeted facilities used in the production of Ukrainian weapons. But in Zaporizhia, closer to the front line fighting, the grounds of a children's hospital were hit. This child was recovering from injuries sustained in a previous explosion. His mother stayed at his bedside under the fresh assault. It was terrifying, she says. I fear for all Ukraine's children. Last night's attacks are a signal of Russia's deadly intent. Britain's support for Ukraine described by the new Defence Secretary as resolute today, will be tested to the full. John Ray, News at 10.
Well, Harry joined Mr. Streeting on his trip to Ukraine, and before he left this evening, he gave us his assessment of the meeting with President Zelensky.
Well, as the Defence Secretary prepares to leave Kyiv this evening, the people staying in this city are anticipating perhaps another night of Russian bombardment. As we arrived here this morning on the train, we could see out of the windows some smoke coming from some of the buildings that have been hit overnight by Russian ballistic missiles and drones. And that is why President Zelensky is making the case so strongly that he needs more Patriot missile defence systems. And that's a case he made to Wes Streeting when he met with him privately today. Now, look, those missile systems aren't something the UK is currently able to provide to Ukraine, we're told. But Wes Streeting did tell me that he left that meeting and will now try and persuade some allies of the UK and Ukraine who have a stockpile of those Patriot missile defence systems to pass some of them on to Ukraine for use ahead of this winter. In terms of the conflict itself, well, the front line is pretty much frozen in the east of this country. There are feelings here in Kyiv that there could be some peace talks ahead of this winter, and the sense here is that actually, unlike last year, Ukraine is in a much stronger position when it comes to this war, and it's Russia at the moment that they feel finds itself on the back foot.
Harry Horton in Kyiv a little earlier there. In other news, an Afghan man, a one-time boxer, has appeared in court in Athens charged with murdering the Edinburgh charity worker Elizabeth Jane Ross. Sharif Ahmadzai is also accused of using Ms Ross's bank cards to steal €10,000 from her and possessing weapons. He's been given a day to instruct a lawyer, so he's due back in court tomorrow. Ms Ross's body was found in a suitcase in a derelict building in Athens. Greek police are investigating whether she knew the suspect through doing similar work with refugees. Our 18-month-long investigation into a cancer-linked pregnancy drug given to unsuspecting mothers-to-be is making yet more impact this evening. The Department of Health and NHS England have agreed to research the long-term effects of diethylstilbestrol, or DES. It was prescribed from the 1940s to the 1970s, including after its damaging side effects were known. As we've repeatedly shown, it didn't just affect the health of those who took it, but the generations who came after them too.
In 1970, Jennifer Bradley was given an anti-miscarriage drug for 6 months of her pregnancy. She was told stilbestrol, commonly known as DES, was completely safe. Yet there was already mounting scientific evidence of the drug's sinister side effects.
When you raised concerns, your worries about the impact of the drug, what did the doctors say to you?
He wouldn't even look at my notes and he completely dismissed it. And he said that you don't worry about things that may never happen. You may walk out of here and go under a bus.
DES was prescribed to thousands of pregnant women between the 1940s and 1980s to prevent miscarriage, but left behind a devastating trail of rare cancers and infertility in the children of those who took it. Jennifer's daughter Susie was poisoned in the womb and has had lifelong gynecological problems.
What have doctors said to you about the increased cancer risk?
That I'm 40 times more likely to get cancer than people that aren't DES exposed. It's not just reproductive cancers, it's breast cancer, there's also evidence of pancreatic cancer. You've got all that worry hanging over you, you're suddenly going to get some life-debilitating illness.
Our investigation found that warnings about the dangers of the drug were ignored by the authorities for decades. Now ministers are taking action. NHS England has set up a DES advisory group made up of senior clinicians to make sure women are getting the right treatment. Ministers have asked the University of Exeter to lead a research project into the intergenerational impact of DES over the next 6 months. It will also help to determine whether lifelong cancer screening is needed. and the medicines regulator has been asked to find medical records detailing just how many women were given the drug.
We should have a structured system like in other countries, in France, the Netherlands and the USA. There's routine screening by people with the expertise and the knowledge to know A, what they're looking for, but B, to be able to give the information to patients. And that's where I think we have the gaps now.
Hearing Susie describe what she's been through, how does that make you feel?
Well, I was absolutely furious, but also I just feel so guilty and so sad about it, you know, that this has happened. And I asked myself, should I have taken it? Should I have just ignored it?
And after years of being dismissed and disbelieved, DES women say they will not be silenced. Sarah Corker, News at 10.
Police in London were quickly on the scene of a multiple stabbing in the busy tourist and business area of Covent Garden this lunchtime. 4 men were stabbed by a 47-year-old woman using what eyewitnesses said was a pair of scissors. She was arrested. Police called it an isolated mental health-related incident. All 4 victims were taken to hospital. 2 have already left. Yesterday, it was the family of Police Constable Andrew Harper who were up in arms that 2 of his killers are still set to benefit from the government's early prison release scheme. Today, it is the force he served with. The Chief Constable of Thames Valley says he's investigating whether to join in legal action against the early release plan, such as the impact of it on his officers.
7 years ago, PC Andrew Harper was dragged behind a car while stopping a quad bike theft. He never came home to his new wife, Lissy, who says allowing 2 of his killers to be released early would make a mockery of our justice system. To have your loved one snatched away from you in such a horrific and senseless way is indescribable in itself, she says. 7 years later, we are now faced with a secondary gut punch that is coming from our own government. Jesse Cole and Albert Bowers were sentenced to 13 years for manslaughter in 2020. Under revised plans to free up prison spaces, the pair will become eligible for early release next year. A decision the Chief Constable of PC Harper's former force is urging the government to reconsider.
I am worried that this matter is affecting the public's confidence in the wider criminal justice system. I would urge the government to listen to the concerns raised by me, by the Police Federation and by the public and relook at this decision again.
On a visit to Portsmouth, Andy Burnham's most senior cabinet member defended the Prime Minister's position.
The Prime Minister has been able to exempt certain offences, including rape, child sex and grooming, but some really difficult decisions remain, and the Prime Minister has been clear that he would like to go further, but has apologised to the family of PC Harper.
But that's not good enough for the Thames Valley Police Union, whose chair is considering legal action.
The government would say that right now they have to draw the line somewhere. So where should they draw the line?
They have to draw the line. I appreciate that, but they have to be on the right side of the line for me. The sentiment across my force, and I think as the wider police family, is one of outrage and disappointment that this government is not protecting police officers, and that's the bottom line here.
It's a row that remains unresolved, causing further hurt for PC Harper's family, friends and colleagues. Carrie Davis, News at 10.
The young Cambridge professor who's at the centre of a plagiarism row has resigned. Jason Arde said recent criticism had gone beyond scholarly disagreement. The relentless accusations had taken a profound toll on him and his family. He said his resignation was not an admission, just the decision of someone who'd reached the limits of what they can endure. The controversial owner of SpaceX, Elon Musk, has had some pretty out-there ideas about exploring space, but to be fair to him, crashing a rocket on the surface of the moon wasn't one of them. Yet that's what happened to a part of a rocket of his from 18 months ago. It had been lost in space and ended up on an accidental collision course with the moon. It hit at more than 5,000 miles an hour, making perhaps its own crater.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff.
When a SpaceX rocket blasted off from Florida last year, it completed its mission to put a Japanese lander on the surface of the moon. But on the way there, part of the rocket system, which would usually fall away and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere, instead got caught up in a big looping orbit of its own, which came to an end on the moon today, to the great excitement of astronomers everywhere.
We know exactly how big and fast and heavy this thing is, and so we can see exactly the damage that it causes, which lets us really understand what the moon is made of in terms of, like, you know, what's the dust like, what's the density like, all that kind of stuff.
This celestial collision is thought to have happened shortly after 7:30 this morning near the Einstein crater, a 180-kilometre wide crater on the rarely glimpsed northwestern edge of the moon. The stray piece of SpaceX rocket weighs about 4 tons. It's the size of a 5-storey building, and it was travelling at well over 5,000 miles an hour, so it would have thrown up a lot of moon dust. Unfortunately, none of the spacecraft which orbit the moon was in the right place at the right time to get a picture of the impact. The best hope now is that telescopes here on Earth may have captured an image of the dust plume, and that before and after pictures of the impact site can be compared. The dangers of fast-moving space junk have been memorably portrayed by Hollywood, and today's lunar crash is a reminder that the space between the Earth and the moon is due for a tidy-up.
And if there were to be a domino effect, more collisions creating more debris, which then causes more collisions, we could find ourselves in the place where an orbit is unusable, and suddenly those spacecraft, those satellites that provide services we depend on every day, can't fly there anymore.
For a planet with ambitions to put a human settlement on its moon, what happens when something big slams into it at high speed is good to know. Probably best, though, not to make a habit of it. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
Finally, the summer of 26 will be remembered for many things, good and bad. For the lepidopterists among us, that's fans of butterflies and moths, it might be this. That is the sound of a hummingbird hawk moth. It's been a bumpy year for them already, thanks, yes, to a long, hot and breezy summer.
If you're lucky enough to spot one, it might just be the most enchanting sight of this summer. Beating its wings 80 times a second, the hummingbird hawk moth has been seen hanging around British gardens more than ever before.
So what is it like for you when you see these creatures buzzing around?
Oh, I love them. I think they're fascinating creatures.
They've been surprising staff and visitors at the National Trust's Stowe Gardens since June.
I think moths kind of have a reputation of being a bit dull, brown little things that fly towards your face at night, but when you're looking at them, they're beautiful, the way they're flying is amazing, and just the story of their migration as well is just really interesting.
I just sat looking into the grasshopper and then spotted this. Get that beauty.
They've created something of a buzz among gardeners on social media. They've hummed their way here on warm southerly winds in search of food that's dried up in their native southern Europe and North Africa during this extreme summer. Phil is a moth fan who's delighted in seeing them in his garden.
They remind me of hummingbirds, which I'm very fond of, and they also, I mean, they perform very well. I mean, most moths are nighttime flyers, you don't see them, so here's something that's sort of showy.
But it's also an important extra pollinator when we're losing so many of our own. And while up to now the moths have been an occasional summer visitor to the UK, conservationists believe our changing climate could change that.
Previously, you get a really harsh frost in the winter and it will kill them off because they're not used to that. You know, they spend the winter down in Spain or France or North Africa. But if we start getting milder winters here, it means they're more able to survive in significant numbers. So that could lead to them being considered a full-time permanent resident.
In some parts of Europe, the moths are considered a good luck charm. Legend has it a swarm was spotted crossing the Channel on D-Day. Soon, they might be a more regular delight. Ben Chapman, News at 10, Buckinghamshire.
Keep a listen out in the garden. That's all for tonight. Kate and Adel are back from 6 with Good Morning Britain from News at 10. Good night.